The air smelled like pine and dry earth as we made our way up the trail, boots crunching over loose gravel and roots that snaked across the dirt like veins. It was still early. The sun could not do much more than bleed soft light through the trees, but that didn't faze me. The quiet made the hike feel almost sacred. Just me, my backpack, the forest, and Caleb. It had been years since we'd taken a trip like this, just the two of us. Life had gotten in the way, as it always does, but somehow we circled back to this, back to where it all started. I glanced ahead at him. Caleb was always a few steps ahead, physically and otherwise. Still lean and fearless, charging up the hill like the incline didn't apply to him. I remember the first time I saw him, all those years ago. We were kids. I must have been 7. He was crouched in the branches of a tree by the school fence, tossing rocks down at the kids walking by. Not to hurt them, just to get a rise, to cause a stir. I should have thought he was a jerk, but I didn't. He looked so free, wild, in a way that made you want to follow. And that's exactly what I did, ever since. Caleb was the kind of guy who jumped from rooftops into swimming pools, who climbed old bridges just to see what was at the top. The guy who once went skydiving on a dare and didn't flinch when the parachute jerked him upward. No fear, none at all. And even now, with the world heavy on our backs and a dozen years between then and now, I still find myself trying to keep up. We kept climbing. The trail narrowed as we went, flanked by tall eucalyptus and moss-draped gums that swayed gently in the breeze. The forest was alive with sound. Birds sang from every direction, with high lilting chirps, deep cooing calls, and that strange mechanical clicking noise some of them make when they're showing off. Above us, the leaves rustled softly, dancing. Occasionally, a gust would rush through, setting off a chain reaction of creaks and sighs in the branches overhead. Somewhere nearby, I could hear a stream, the water rushing fast over rock and root. It was faint at first, but grew louder with each bend in the trail. The smell changed too. Damp earth, cold stone, and that crisp mineral scent that only running water carries. The hill was steeper than I remembered. Or maybe I was just older. Sweat formed on the back of my neck, trickling down my spine in slow, annoying lines. A bead rolled along my temple and down my cheek. I wiped it away without breaking stride, more out of stubbornness than comfort. Caleb didn't slow down, and I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of calling me out for lagging. Every few minutes I'd catch glimpses of him ahead, stepping over fallen branches or pointing at odd-shaped trees like he'd seen them in dreams. He always had that look in his eyes, like the woods weren't just trees and trails, but some kind of living thing that wanted to be known. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with forest air. Despite the sweat, despite the incline, it felt good to be out here. It felt real, like we were peeling off the layers of everything fake we'd wrapped around ourselves over the years. Just the sound of the stream, the birds, the leaves, and the two of us, walking. The deeper we hiked, the quieter the forest seemed to get. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe the birds had moved on, or we'd wandered past whatever invisible line they didn't cross. But the silence slowly crept in, replacing the chorus of bird song and leaf rustle with something thinner and emptier. It was like the whole world stopped spinning. We came to the stream a little while later. It had clear, cold water weaving its way through the rocks and tree roots. The air there felt cooler, like it had been hiding in the shade for hours. Without saying a word, we both knelt down and cupped our hands into the current. The water was icy, sharp on my tongue, but it was clean and crisp, and exactly what we needed after the climb. Caleb splashed some across his face and made a joke about it being better than coffee. I let out a soft laugh and sat on a rock, catching my breath and stretching my calves. That's when I noticed Caleb staring downstream, a crease forming between his eyebrows. "You see that?" he asked, pointing. Something was floating in the water, caught against a bundle of reeds. It was small and brownish, almost looked like debris from a bird's nest. He waded in, ankle deep, and grabbed it. The thing he pulled out was strange. It was woven with thin, yellowed grass, and it had small sticks tied together in an uneven pattern, like someone had braided it in a hurry or with shaking hands. It was about the size of a dinner plate, but warped and sagging like it had been left in the elements too long. "What the hell is it?" Caleb turned it over in his hands, poking it gently. His guess was some kind of basket or forest art. You know those weird hiker people that leave rock stacks and wood spirals? I didn't say anything. Something about it felt off, the way the knots were tied. It was tight and frantic, and the odd shapes embedded in the weave. Maybe teeth, maybe not. Caleb, of course, didn't seem fazed. He grinned, then launched the thing back into the water. We watched as it bobbed gently in the current before slipping away downstream. Gone, just like that. And for a second, I swear, the silence grew heavier. We made it to the campsite just before sunset. It was a small clearing nestled between a half-ring of gnarled trees, with mossy rocks scattered like forgotten furniture, the kind of place that would have seemed peaceful on any other day. But something about it felt off. I didn't say anything. The air felt different here. Still forest air, still pine and wet bark and dry grass, but now there was something else beneath it, something thicker, like the air didn't want to be breathed. Even the shadows looked heavier, like they pooled instead of stretching. Caleb dropped his pack with a grunt and immediately got to work pitching his tent. He whistled, some tuneless melody he always defaulted to, and moved like nothing had changed. No hesitation. No second glances at the woods, not even a sign of exhaustion. Meanwhile, I just stood there, my pack still slung over one shoulder, listening. There were no birds, no insects, just the wind brushing through the leaves in little spurts, like it was unsure whether it should be there at all. I finally crouched down and began setting up my tent, too, trying to mimic Caleb's casual pace. But the hairs on the back of my neck refused to settle. Every time I turned around, it felt like something should have been there, watching, just out of frame. He didn't notice it. Caleb never noticed that kind of thing. Or maybe he just didn't care. "Gonna build a fire before it gets dark," he said, standing up and stretching. "You want to grab some dry stuff?" I nodded. "Yeah, sure." My voice came out steadier than I felt. Because, truthfully, I didn't want to go deeper into the woods alone. Not even 10 feet. Not even with Caleb a shout away. And I couldn't shake the thought. Had the forest always been this quiet? Or had we crossed some invisible threshold? I didn't go far. Just enough to stay within shouting distance of the clearing. Close enough to still hear Caleb's whistling. The sun was bleeding into the treetops, staining everything gold and orange, but it didn't feel warm. I felt watched. Every twig I stepped on felt like a scream. The silence pressed in tighter the deeper I walked. I could hear everything: my own breathing, the rustle of my shirt, the beat of my heart like a drum in my ears. The forest wasn't just quiet. It was listening. It was waiting. It was scared. I knelt to grab a few dry sticks near the base of a tree when I saw it. Hanging, about 6 feet up, caught on a low branch. Another one of those woven things. But this one was different. It was tighter and more intricate, bundled from grasses and twine and something pale that looked like maybe thread or hair. I looked around. Another and another. They were everywhere, dangling from the trees like ornaments, like some kind of ritual decoration. Some looked fresh, some were crumbling apart. I could see one shaped into a loop, like a noose. Another had bones tucked into the weave, tiny and curved. Bird, maybe, or not. My skin went cold. Every part of me screamed to run, but I kept backing up, slow and careful, like I'd wake something up if I moved too fast. Then I heard it. Not a bird, not the wind, a twig, snapping, behind me. I quickly turned and nothing. But that was all it took. I bolted. Sticks flew from my arms as I ran. Branches clawed at my shirt and slapped my face, but I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. I just ran, chest burning, until the firelight of camp came back into view. Caleb was crouched by the fire pit, coaxing flames from a bundle of kindling. He looked up, grinning. "Geez, man, what's going on?" I tried to speak, but it came out in gasps. He raised an eyebrow and asked if I was okay. I stopped, swallowing air. "There's stuff in the trees, hanging, like the thing you found earlier. A lot of them." He squinted at me. "They're everywhere, Caleb. I think we should get going." He just chuckled and tossed a stick into the growing fire. "Forest weirdos, man. Probably part of some Instagram nature cult." Then he moved on, like it meant nothing. Like I hadn't just sprinted back from something wrong. I sat down across from him, chest still heaving, and watched the flames. The silence was still there. Only now, it was inside me too. I tried to shake it off. The running, the things in the trees, the way the forest felt like it was holding its breath. I sat close to the fire, letting the heat soak into my skin, letting the crackle fill my ears. Caleb handed me a tin of food, something canned and salty, and we ate without saying much at first. Just the sound of spoons scraping metal and flames snapping dry twigs. Eventually we talked, the way old friends do when there's too much time to catch up on and no real plan for how to do it. We talked about what we'd missed, life stuff, jobs that didn't work out, people we used to know. Caleb told me about this girl he dated who wanted to live out of a van and sell driftwood sculptures. I told him how my last apartment had a roach problem so bad I used to name them out of spite. We laughed, the kind of quiet laugh that only works around a fire. But even as we talked, I couldn't relax. I kept glancing at the tree line, expecting to see one of those woven things swaying gently in the breeze. But there was nothing, just the dark, thick, and absolute. Every time Caleb looked away, I studied his face, wondering how he was so calm, wondering if maybe he had noticed and just wasn't saying anything, or if I was really the only one who felt it. That sense of something crawling just beneath the edge of the woods, something watching. He didn't seem tense, not in the slightest. If anything, he looked more alive than I'd seen him in years. Like being out here lit something up in him. Maybe that should have been comforting. But it wasn't. The fire had burned low, just embers now, glowing faintly like the last heartbeat of the day. The wind had picked up a little, just enough to make the flames flicker. Neither of us said it, but we were both exhausted. The long hike, the heavy packs, the constant low buzz of being watched. Even if Caleb never admitted it, all of it had worn us down. We agreed it was time to sleep. Caleb zipped himself into his tent without a second thought, like it was just another night. I lingered. I stood by the fire, arms crossed tight, letting the warmth tickle my shins while the rest of me cooled fast in the mountain air. I looked out past the clearing, past the ring of firelight where the trees began. Nothing moved, not even a breeze now. The forest had stilled, but not in peace, in pause, like something was waiting. I told myself it was all in my head, just shapes and shadows. But still, I scanned every tree, every branch. I looked for anything hanging, swaying, shifting wrong. For eyes, for limbs, for woven things clinging like spiders to bark. But there was only dark. I finally turned and crawled into my tent, the nylon walls rustling against my coat. I zipped it closed behind me, the small, thin barrier between me and everything else. I lay down on my sleeping bag, eyes wide open, listening to Caleb breathe through the fabric wall beside me. The fire outside cracked once loud and sudden, and then fell silent. The forest held its breath, and so did I. Even though I tried to fight it, I tried to stay alert, to listen for every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves, but my body gave in. Sleep took me fast, the kind of heavy, bone-deep sleep that only comes after a full day of walking with a pack digging into your shoulders. But it wasn't restful. I dreamed I was back in the clearing, but the fire was out. The night was darker than before and blacker, like the stars had been wiped clean from the sky. Something was watching me from the trees. I couldn't see it at first. I just the sense of it, looming just beyond the tree line, heavy and tall. Then its outline came into view, silhouetted against the dark like oil against smoke. It had antlers, massive, jagged antlers that spread across the forest. Its body was wrong. It was taller than any man but impossibly lean. It didn't move. It waited. Then I saw its eyes, bright and red, burning through the dark like coals. I couldn't look away. And then it screamed, a deep, distorted sound that shook the world around me, like metal being torn, like the earth itself crying out. I snapped awake, but the scream hadn't stopped. It was still echoing. It was real, carrying through the forest around our tent. I barely had time to sit up before I heard Caleb's voice. It was sharp, hoarse, and panicked. What the hell was that? It was the first time I'd ever heard fear in his voice. Real fear. That alone sent my heart thudding hard against my ribs. Caleb wasn't afraid of anything. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My mouth was too dry. My hands were shaking, gripping my sleeping bag like it was going to fly away. And then it came again. Another scream. This one closer. Not in front of us, but behind our tents, just beyond the tree line. The sound was unnatural, not human, not animal. Something in between, or maybe something else entirely. It rattled through my spine like someone had plucked a wire behind my skull. I sat frozen, wide-eyed in the dark. And Caleb. He didn't say anything after that. No joke, no calming reassurance. Just silence. I could hear him shifting around in his tent, but not moving, not unzipping, not even breathing loud. We were both waiting, listening, and that's when we realized it was moving. Fast. Whatever it wasn't just screaming, it was circling. We could hear the brush crackling, twigs snapping, dirt crunching under something heavy. It darted back behind us, then again to the side, then silence. Nothing but our breathing, ragged and shallow. We weren't alone, and whatever was out there, it was hunting. I heard the zip tear through the silence. Caleb's tent. Then the unmistakable sound of metal, familiar and heavy. Click. He brought a gun? My mind raced. Caleb always said he didn't believe in guns. Said fear made people stupid. Said courage was about standing your ground, not pulling a trigger. But there he was, getting ready, preparing for the worst. Maybe he'd changed. Or maybe he'd always known something like this might happen. I fumbled quietly for my own bag, hands trembling as I found the cold grip of the pistol I'd packed, just in case. It was more for bears or snakes, I'd told myself. I never imagined I'd need it for something that screamed like that. I slid the zipper open inch by inch, slow so it didn't echo, and pulled the firearm out, cradling it against my chest. We didn't speak. We just listened. The forest had gone dead quiet again, like even the trees were afraid to move. Then, the footsteps came back, closer this time. Not crashing through the woods like before. Now it was creeping, studying us. Whatever it was, it knew we were awake. And it liked that. It started with a soft tap, just a tiny plink against the canvas of my tent. Then another, and another, like someone tossing pebbles, deliberate, teasing. A stick hit next, thicker, heavier. The sound it made felt like a gunshot. I jerked, heart slamming in my throat. My grip on the pistol tightened. Another stone, then two at once. It wasn't trying to break in. It wasn't trying to scare us outright. It was playing with us, messing with our heads, like it knew the fear was worse when drawn out. I could hear Caleb in his tent, breathing heavy, and something else. Sniffling. He was crying. The guy who once jumped off a bridge for fun, who walked across frozen rivers barefoot in high school, who never flinched, never backed down, was crying. That did more to unravel me than anything else. If Caleb was breaking, what hope did I have? I whispered, voice barely above the sound of the wind. Caleb, what do we do? No response. Just silence from his side. More rocks hitting the tents. Closer now. Louder. I clenched my teeth and pressed my forehead against the inside of my tent, my breath fogging the fabric. I couldn't take much more of this. The hits turned violent. A stone slammed against the top of my tent with such force I thought it might tear straight through. Another one followed. Then a flurry like a storm of fists hammering on the canvas from all sides. Then, silence. Just for a second. Long enough to hope it was over. And then something charged. A blur of noise and motion. The fabric of my tent bulged inwards, a shape pressing hard, clawing, shrieking with that same inhuman roar I'd heard in my dream. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just shot. Twice. The gun cracked like thunder, deafening in the confined space. I felt the recoil tear through my shoulder. A scream followed, not of pain but of rage. A high metallic screech like metal grinding against bone. Then thud. I heard it crash backward, limbs flailing, landing in the remains of our dying fire. I heard the crackle of embers and a howl of something, burning. But it wasn't done. It tore away into the woods, thrashing through underbrush, unleashing that same guttural scream every few seconds. It didn't fade. It just circled, pacing, mocking. We didn't sleep. Not a word passed between us. We sat in silence, staring at the flickering red-orange light that filtered through the canvas the last glow of the coals. Every time I thought it had gone quiet, the scream would rise again from the distance, dragging across the trees like nails on a chalkboard. We waited, and waited, and waited, until at last the sky started to brighten. The screeches had stopped, or we'd just gone numb to them. We crawled out, legs stiff and unsteady. My eyes stung from the smoke, from the fear. The clearing looked untouched. No footprints, no signs of what had happened except for the scorched pit and the two shell casings near my tent. We didn't speak, we didn't pack. We just grabbed what we could and left the rest behind. Hiking out fast. Not even Caleb looked back. We hadn't gotten far when I realized it hadn't left us. Whatever it was still there, just out of sight, just beyond the trees. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. That awful presence, keeping pace with us. The way the underbrush shifted, the way the birds never returned. Caleb saw it too, or maybe just felt it, same as me. We weren't hiking anymore. We were running, down the narrow trail, dodging roots and branches, our breath ragged and loud in the silence of the woods. But it was faster. No matter how hard we pushed, no matter how quick we moved, it stayed just off to the side. Always there. Always gaining. Then it screeched. Not the same scream as before. This one was worse. Longer, full of hate, like it was letting us know the game was over, that it was done playing. Caleb spun mid-run and fired twice into the trees. The shots exploded through the stillness, sending birds up in a panic. The thing let out a horrible final shriek, one that rattled my skull and made my knees buckle mid-step. And then, silence. A dead, choking silence. No wind, no bugs, just the ringing in my ears and the thud of my heartbeat. We didn't wait to see if it was really gone. We just ran, full sprint. Caleb fired into the air every few minutes like some kind of desperate signal, like noise alone could keep it back. I don't know how long we ran like that, but the worst part was knowing it might not have been afraid at all. It might have let us go. We kept running, lungs burning, legs threatening to buckle beneath us, when all at once the forest came back to life. The shift was instant. A gust of wind swept through the trees. Birds erupted in song. Insects buzzed back into the air like someone had unpaused the world. Leaves rustled, twigs cracked. Normal sounds. Familiar, human sounds. And it was deafening. Both of us threw our hands to our ears. It wasn't just loud, it was overwhelming. Like every sound in the woods had been waiting and building up just for that moment. And that's when the thought hit me like a punch to the chest. What the hell could make the earth itself hold its breath like that? What kind of thing walks this world that can even make trees fall silent? Was it fear, or was it something else, something deeper, like reality itself was warping around that thing like the woods had folded themselves away until it passed? I don't know. I don't want to know. Caleb turned to me, face pale and streaked with sweat. His eyes locked with mine. There were no words, but there didn't need to be. We both knew. We'd never talk about it, not to friends, not to family, not to each other. Who would believe us? What would we even say? No one would understand. And even if they did, even if someone did believe us, it would make it real. More real than it already was. And honestly, we just wanted to forget. Whatever followed us in those woods, whatever screamed beneath the trees, it had left a mark. Something we'd carry to our graves like a secret carved into our bones. We didn't stop moving until the trees thinned out and the parking lot came into view. Even then, we didn't breathe easy. We didn't feel safe. Not really. Because the silence might return. Caleb was never the same after that. Before, he was the wild one. The fearless kid in the tree throwing rocks at strangers. The teenager daring everyone to sneak out past curfew. The guy who'd leap from a cliff into ice water without thinking twice. He was the one I looked up to, the one who made life feel bigger than it was. But after that night, he shrank. Not physically, but in presence. He moved quieter, laughed less. Sometimes I'd catch him staring into the distance like he was still listening for something just out of earshot. He stopped talking about skydiving, stopped going out. When friends invited us on a weekend hike, he made excuses, claimed he was too tired or too busy. He never said it out loud, but I could see it. The fear had sunk into him, curled around his bones like roots through soil. The woods took something from him. But me? It was like we'd switched places, pulling that trigger in that moment of total panic. Something inside me cracked open, and not in a bad way. It was like I'd finally seen the edge of the world and come back from it. The fear I used to carry about everything. Fear of failing, of falling, of embarrassing myself, it just dissolved. I was different too. Not broken like Caleb, not haunted, just awake. I started doing things I'd always said no to. Booked a flight and went hang gliding off the coast. Took up night diving and skydiving. If someone asked, "Aren't you scared?" I'd smile and say, "I've been scared before. This isn't it." Whatever was out there, that thing with the scream and the glowing eyes, it rewired something in me. Where Caleb saw the edge and stepped back, I jumped. But I never brought up the trip again. Not to him, not to anyone. We don't talk about it. He doesn't even make eye contact when I bring up hiking. If the topic drifts too close, he changes the subject. Sometimes I think he's angry with me, not for anything I did, just for not being as ruined by it as he was. But I get it. We both heard the scream. We both felt it. The way it vibrated through the dirt, through the air, and through the blood in our veins. We both saw how quiet the forest had gone. And we both know that whatever it was, it's still out there. Watching, waiting, listening, just beyond the trees.